Irish NFL show in association with QuinBet. We're live on this first day of the new league year. Happy New League year. This is the point where all the big free agency signings and trades we've been discussing over the past few days become official. Players signed for their new teams. And yes, we begin by focusing tonight on the biggest deal not to happen. The blockbuster trade, which was supposed to see Maxx Crosby become a Baltimore Raven, is no more. In case you haven't heard, the Raiders said that was because the Ravens backed out of the deal. In the past few minutes, though, Ravens general manager Eric DeCosta has been hosting a press conference setting out the Baltimore side of the story. Shane Brennan, Ciaran, Boyle and Craig Rigden with me, Conor Brophy, to look at this and all the rest of the day's big moves in the NFL. Just maybe to set the scene, gents, before we get into it, key points from that DeCosta presser as I picked them up, and feel free to jump in and correct me or add some momentum here. Firstly, that the Ravens said they started discussions with Trey Hendrickson when it became clear that Tyler Linderbaum, their centre, was going to leave, and so they would have more cap room than they thought they might. And they had tried to get both Trey Hendrickson and Maxx Crosby. So the person breathing the biggest sigh of relief this morning is Joe Burrow, because I don't think he would have wanted to face both his former teammate Trey Hendrickson and Maxx Crosby on the same devastating Baltimore Ravens front twice a season. Eric DeCosta didn't, unless I missed it, make any specific reference to the words either medical or physical. He was very careful about the language he used and didn't use. What he said was that they weren't able to complete what he called the process of signing Maxx Crosby, quote, based on our assessment of the situation. So I think what became clear here is both on legal and medical advice. Clearly, he's not in a position to, and you know, you wouldn't want him to ethically start getting into medical details on Maxx Crosby. He said he understood based on the questions that he got. This is Eric DeCosta we're talking about here. That there was skepticism around the Ravens' motives for, you know, why they did what they did. He said, I've got a responsibility to the Ravens to do what we think is best for the club. What was also very clear from the get-go was, I mean, Eric DeCosta didn't look like a guy who was about to either, you know, be jubilant or go to town on the Raiders for what they said this morning. He looked shook, frankly. He looked devastated. And he said as much. He said, nobody's more upset about this than me. He said he was gutted by it, actually. He said, it's a big regret for me. And the other thing that I took away from it, lads, is that he was at pains to praise the Raiders organization, didn't take any opportunity to take a swing at them for the way that they presented this morning. The way that Eric DeCosta came across to me, Shane, was as a man who had seen what he thought would be a transformative move for his team fall through, and gave the lie to any suggestion. And credit both yourself and Brian O'Leary, because this morning you were leaning very heavily in this direction, but, you know, kind of gave the lie to any suggestion that the Ravens had acted in bad faith here, that this is just a very unfortunate turn of events, particularly for the player, which he emphasized himself, but for both organizations. And he looked like a guy who really wanted Maxx Crosby to play for his team and is devastated that he's not going to be.
Yeah, I mean, so much has happened today, and the roller coaster of emotions, I think, has been sort of incredible for anything surrounding both of these franchises. First thing to say is obviously, what it must have liked to be Maxx Crosby today. Obviously, landing, having this said the emotional goodbye, landing in Baltimore, getting in the situation where he was getting footy ready, set up, and then have to have Eric DeCosta come in and say, listen, this isn't going to work for us. You're going to have to take the first flight back. And in fairness to Crosby, he was back in the building in Las Vegas rehabbing this morning, in fairness to him. So that's, I guess, a level of his character. But in terms of what's all this stuff happening, it's amazing the rush that everyone got on this morning to blame Baltimore. It's Baltimore that's doing business wrong. It's Baltimore that are clearly in the wrong here, and the Raiders are quite clearly the only wrong party. And there's so much complicated, and there's stuff that even right now we don't fully understand. The sense of it is, listen to Dan Rossini and a few others reporting this morning that when they landed in, at that point the contact with Trey Hendrickson had already been made. But I think the suggestion is that it kind of already was made after the medical doctors in Baltimore had a chance to do their own assessment of Maxx Crosby. They seem to be to sort of measure twice and cut once with this, because yes, all the teams who were trying to go in for Maxx Crosby obviously spoke to the Raiders doctors. There's a doctor in Los Angeles, I think, who did the surgery. They were speaking to him as well. I sense that everybody knew coming into this that the short term might be okay, but not quite sure in the long term. But it's quite clear that once they landed in Baltimore, there was a sense that actually the long term diagnostics of what can you expect from Crosby was probably different than they anticipated. So much so that they had their own team doctor, and after he did his own medical assessment, I think they had 5 independent doctors also give their opinion before they made a final assessment. That must be said as well in terms of because again, people jump straight away and assume that this is on the fishiness of this, and I'm not 100% discounting that, but the cynicism I think overrided everything else this morning.
But I think and to your point, right? Whatever about looking for all the different angles of the story and wanting to establish what did and didn't happen, you're not entitled to assume bad faith. Like, the burden of proof is on you if you're going to say, "Whoa, I think the Ravens did something hooky here," and you're seeing all these hot take merchants flying out from minute one on this announcement arriving into the world saying, "Oh, clearly the Ravens are playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers," and they pulled this massive one over on the Raiders and everyone else and sent this head fake when actually all they wanted was Trey Hendrickson all along. And what a clever piece of business. I mean, it reminded me of a Louis C.K. bit where he was talking about another form of extreme behavior. And, the line was, "You can do this. You can do this once." Like, you could never do business with any other general manager in the league, any other owner in the league, based on negotiating in bad faith like that. It would be completely untenable. And also, as Brian and yourself were saying on the instant reaction pod this morning, this is an organization that generally does things really well, which is why they're competitive every single year, and why they, with the addition of Maxx Crosby, probably would have leapt to the top of, the favorites to win the AFC and be the AFC's representative in the Super Bowl in the coming season. They draft well, they develop well, and they sign trades well. By the way, it's not unprecedented for the Baltimore Ravens to not proceed with the signing of a player because they didn't satisfy a medical. They've done this 3 or 4 times. They're not the only team that's done it, by the way. It's to your point, Shane. And one of the things that this does, I might bring you on this point, Craig, is it gives us insight and gives people who don't follow this aspect of the signing and trading process closely, gives us an insight into what teams' risk tolerances are. Every team has a different risk tolerance, because the physical isn't a pass-fail thing. It's not like this one's good, that one's bad, you throw that one in the bin. It's a risk report. It's telling you what's the likelihood of this player being able to start 17 games plus playoff games and complete a season and complete all of the seasons that you're paying for in the deal before you do it. And then you decide, based on what you're giving up, whether that's a risk worth taking. And what the Baltimore Ravens did clearly when they saw this report, and I'm saying clearly, but they haven't actually confirmed that it was on medical reasons. I mean, it seems 99.9% likely the case that that's what it was. But what this report we imagine told the Ravens is, it's not worth 2 first-round picks for this, because the risk of this guy missing games is high enough that you're not going to get value for the draft capital. No team in the NFL arguably has a better idea of how to value draft capital than the Baltimore Ravens. They famously accumulate compensatory picks. They end up with more draft picks and more ways to move up and down the board than any other team. They know every minutiae of what 2 first-round draft picks are worth. And if they looked at that medical report and looked at what they were giving up, I find it very easy to believe that they were able to back out of a deal in the way that they did without there being any bad faith at all.
So I'm going to bring up a new Hall of Famer who is going into the Hall of Fame this coming year in Drew Brees. 2006, he fails a physical with the Dolphins. He then passes a physical with the Saints on his shoulder. The Saints obviously win a Super Bowl. The Dolphins don't. And in that time period, though, what Drew Brees did is he proved the point that we're making here, in the fact that one team has looked at the physical and gone, "Do you know what? This is not worth the investment that we think it's going to be worth." He then goes to the Saints. The Saints go, "Okay, we are happy with that physical and we are going to go ahead with it." And it worked out perfectly for the Saints. It's not to say it happens every time. You alluded to it a minute ago with the Ravens and the fact that they've done this before. 2020, they did it with Michael Brockers. He had an ankle injury, decided not to do it. He went on and played 3 years, 3 more seasons in the league. So there is an element there of where it kind of not backfires, but where an element of where, that player does go on to do it. But you go back to 2018, they did it with Ryan Grant, a receiver. He failed a physical with them for an ankle injury. He signed with the Colts. He played 2 games with the Raiders in 2019. And how many people can say that they actually remember Ryan Grant? Like it's one and the other, isn't it? That's the way that it goes. And I think that just the way that it's gone here is just what's happened at the end of the day. And there is a chance that he gets traded to the Bears. He goes to the Cowboys, even though the Cowboys doctor was one of those 5 independent doctors. So you've got to say maybe they're out on that as well. So there is a chance.
And if there's a team that likes to roll the dice, it's the Dallas Cowboys. Right?
Yeah, shocker that a Jerry Jones employee decides to be a little cautious when it comes to things. But there's
and I think that's when we knew that Jerry Jones might be closer to death than we ever previously thought. This may be a little bit too rich for my blood. Jerry, are you okay?
But you're right. You know, there is no doubt that Maxx Crosby either plays for the Raiders and does extremely well, or goes to another team and does extremely well. But for the Raiders, and Ted Lasso quote, here we go. But as my doctor said when I had too much fettuccine Alfredo, it's a little bit too rich for my blood.
Ciaran, the person that you feel for in all of this most of all is Maxx Crosby. Never mind the rights and wrongs of which team was done dirty or not done dirty, depending on which narrative you believe. Maxx Crosby was on the brink of executing a move to a team that put him in position, much better position, arguably, to win a Lombardi. And let's not write off the Raiders' chances next year. They're making a lot of moves. They're going to have a highly touted rookie quarterback at the helm next year, and they look like they're putting the pieces in place to try and improve what was the scenario for Geno Smith when he was in that position last year. But it's really tough on Maxx Crosby. It's a very public, it's a humiliation in ways. You have your fitness to play cast into doubt. Your value in terms of if you are going to execute a trade is now lower than it would have been. And potentially that's going to affect the contract that you'd be able to sign out the other side of it as well. So he's the one who's impacted. I mean, he's still going to be a very rich man and he's still playing football for a living. So let's get this into context. But it's very tough on Maxx Crosby in this moment.
Yeah, first off, I want to kind of credit DeCosta. I haven't heard a Boston accent that thick since Fitzy and Delahunt from The Departed in 2006. He was straight out of Central, that guy. But yeah, getting back to Crosby. I mean, we've seen the photos of him and taking a picture from his hotel room at the stadium in Baltimore. He was looking forward to, I'm sure, all the trappings of being a huge free agent signing and, being wined and dined by the Ravens and looking forward to the seasons to come. I mean, it's somebody definitely the Ravens could have done with. I mean, we've seen time and time again them blow leads, or they've been fragile, in the third or fourth quarter when they needed somebody to lay the lumber and maybe get a turnover. So we're kind of deprived of that. But again, you still have to think that there's a huge market for him out there. There's a thing, I'm not sure if people are aware, there's a law over here called the HIPAA law, whereby, and this is probably the main reason, I'm going into a little bit of a medical tangent here, but there's probably a reason, and this may be the reason why we're not finding out about the extent of his injury. There's a law here called the HIPAA law where you're not, without the consent of the patient, which in this case would be Crosby, you're not allowed to disclose the details or the fine details of someone's injury or whatever may be ailing them. So essentially, to me, in my opinion, he kind of holds the cards now because he's the only one that really knows what's wrong with him. And he'll be able to give that information to teams, but we're not, the general public will not find that, will not be privy to that information unless Crosby decides to make it, publicly known. So that's the other X factor here that I don't think a lot of people are talking about. I mean, the HIPAA law is a huge thing over here. You can't go in saying, so-and-so's in the hospital because of this. It's very much a privacy thing. So in that regard, I'm okay with Crosby, having a secondary market, as it were, after Baltimore pulled out. And I still think he's still going to land. I mean, we've heard all the stories. He's back with the Raiders. He's working out. He's doing what he's an employee of the Raiders still, and he's still going to keep them. He's going to keep sweet with them. But I have no doubt in the coming future that he's going to be courted, and he's going to find a role on a team, and he's going to get paid. So it's not all doom and gloom today for Crosby. Ideally, he would have, been wearing the purple and black in Baltimore, but it's not. The story's not over for him just yet. So I'm fairly confident he'll end up somewhere else other than Las Vegas.
There were some other bits of news today, Shane. None of them quite as high profile as this one, obviously, but some other teams getting some business done. Bradley Chubb went to the Bills, giving them the sort of bite up front that they've been looking for opposite Greg Rousseau and been struggling to find for some time.
Yeah, interesting move, obviously, sort of within the division. Sorry, just I have to flush this out of my head before I get on the Chubb. I know you were trying to move it on, Conor. I just want to make one quick final thing on the Baltimore thing. I think so much of this controversy and everything which is bubbled around, I think, is probably not helped by the fact that we are in this sort of legal tampering period where nothing can be officially put on paper, and people are talking about the sort of ripple effects and yada 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 yada. Like, can we not just start free agency on Monday, and at least people then can have a sort of truth and as to whether you can sign deals or not sign deals, instead of people talk about, oh, well, what if Las Vegas had hit the cap and they were doing this on the basis of X, Y, and Z. So anyway, I just thought there was I wanted to get that off my chest. That's been like bugging me all day. It's like,
no, but
I feel
fair,
like
and you raise a good point. And I was saying this in the WhatsApp chat earlier on today. It's amazing for these organizations are all owned by multi-billionaires, many of whom have enjoyed business success beyond the ken of the vast majority of mortals. And when it comes to the way that teams are run, I mean, that's an incredibly risky way to do business. It's like Clark Griswold building the swimming pool in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation on the hope that he gets his end-of-year bonus, which he ends up having to kidnap his boss in order to secure. You don't spend the money before you're sure it's going to be in your account. You don't sign the player and go off and make a whole bunch of moves without getting the physical done. Now, you would think in any normal business, you would either do the physical straight away and know whether or not you should be proceeding with or backing out of the deal when it's possible to get it over the line, or else you do what is common practice in the corporate world, where if you're negotiating a deal, whether it's a merger or an asset purchase or something, there are break clauses. Once you enter into exclusive negotiations, if one team pulls out, well, they have to compensate the other team, whether that be through draft picks or through paying a portion of the player's salary or something like that. That's how those guys would do business in their day-to-day business, but they seem to abandon all reason, or allow their front offices to abandon all reason when they're moving players around the board and on their own real life version of fantasy football, rather than when it's dollars and cents. Anyway, that's enough for now, I'm sure. On the Crosby
I'm sorry for that little segue. I was on the treadmill earlier on today, being like, I just want to say this. I have to get it out here somewhere. This is like my sort of forum for everything.
Hashtag humble brag there, Shane. Putting in work in the off season. He's coming back cut. Just you wait and see.
It was the only way I could actually listen to a podcast in peace and have nobody disrupt me, is to just get in there, just be surrounded by people also wearing their headphones. On the Chubb thing, think about Bradley Chubb in Miami. Obviously, he came into Miami on the back of a couple of Pro Bowl seasons, had an injury which sort of plagued him into 2024. I think what's interesting is the fact that like his production and the way he's been used has changed in Miami. Like that defense has, like, how wasn't the bit that took the step back over the sort of regression of the Mike McDaniel era. But he peaked at the same time as a team did in as this sort of version of Miami did in 23, in terms of the frequency of tackles, how good he was at stopping the run game. It's an interesting move by Buffalo to try and obviously still not get as much out of him as he can. Of course, he's 29. He's still very good at getting forced fumbles, as was the case when he first moved into Miami. So I think the Buffalo defense needs a lot of work and needs a lot of players. More than anything, they need turnover makers. I think he has, like, Chubb might necessarily be always the best being in the right position when it comes to making his tackles, but he can be a turnover getter when used in the right situation. And I think maybe the new system they're going to set up in Buffalo might be able to utilize him well in that regard.
Craig, a move by the Packers, who as we were discussing with Ciaran O'Donovan last night, have let a lot of players go, and particularly on the defensive side of the ball. But they've added a player from within the division in Javon Hargrave, who was released by the Vikings, and gives them a little bit of beef. What do you rank of this deal?
I think it was a necessary deal. I think we still are unaware of the kind of situational aspect of Michael Parsons' knee at this moment. I remember seeing him at Radio Row during the Pro Bowl on a little scooter. So that kind of says everything you need to know there. And we're only a month removed from that. So, it's clearly not at the point where he can put weight on it to a heavy degree. So I think it's a good move. I don't think he's had the best last few seasons in the terms of his numbers. You're looking at 5 sacks in the previous 2 seasons combined versus 30 sacks in the previous 3 to that. So he needs to recover a little bit of form. But I think for the Packers, they needed to do it. Obviously, they lost Rashawn Gary. He went across to the Cowboys. We covered that one on Monday. And I think that what they've done here is they've kind of gone for it an older player, maybe, just to set himself back up. The year in Minnesota really was pretty poor, as was the last year in San Fran. So it's an interesting one. I'm not really sure what to make it long
to your point, though, if you're letting Rashawn Gary and Quay Walker go for, it seems they haven't obviously commented on this publicly, but it seems for lack of production, the guy you're bringing in isn't, jumping off the page as a must sign to replace him. Now, we don't know what they're planning to do in the draft, and you got to read draft and free agency as 2 halves of the same book. And the Packers, I think, are more than due the benefit of the doubt when it comes to which players they choose, and they invest a lot of draft capital on defense. They put a lot of first-round picks, including the one they expended on Rashawn Gary onto that side of the ball, and they generally used them pretty well. But yeah, I mean, I thought, like you, I wasn't entirely sure what to make of it. It seemed like we need to sign someone. This is someone. Let's sign this guy.
I did, yeah, absolutely, and it's a strange one. But the Packers have lost a lot of players, and they need to start rebuilding somewhere, and they're going for a player that has been obviously released from a contract early, and are going to take a flyer on him. And sometimes it does turn itself around, and you're looking at a new defensive head coach there in Jeff Hafley. So I think if somebody can pull it out of him, then that's the one. I might take a lead from Shane here and just segue a little bit, just because I saw some breaking news. You might have seen me laughing.
See what you've done there, Shane. You set the precedent for like off tangent segues. I don't know where he's going there, people.
This is going to go to Ciaran, and I'm a little scared of doing this right now. But I don't know if you noticed, but I was laughing when Shane was talking, and it's because the Giants have re-signed Evan Neal, and that might be the funniest free agency ad there may be across this entire free agency. So, Ciaran.
Well, shoot, I'm just finding this out right now. Jesus, I wasn't even scrolling on Twitter. I am speechless. I don't know what to say to that. You can take every adjective possible, because I'm just looking at some people right now on Twitter. I'm seeing stunned, outrageous. Geez, I don't know. There's got to be something else going on behind the scenes here, because Jesus, we need to roll that Don LaGreca clip from 2023. I'll send that in the group chat later on, where he rants about Evan Neal. But this is brutal. I mean, this. Oh, I feel like one of those guys on Sky Sports when they're not when people can't watch the game, but the reporters are there. Oh, this is terrible. Oh, this is pretty. Yeah, this is bad. I've been caught unawares with this. I wasn't prepared for this. I am. Why is the room spinning? This is not good at all. This is not good. This is instant reaction, and it is not good. I need to look into this.
Shane, we've spoken a lot about players being injured. By the way, I ran over to watch that Eric DaCosta presser on NFL Network earlier. I can lash my ankle off the coffee table, and I'm telling you, I might not be ready. I wouldn't pass a physical right now. I might not be ready for the new season. Absolute stinger, like that was in the bone, just right in the bone. But if a quarterback goes down either in preseason or once we see week 1 next year, you can bet that the Better Call Kirk sign will be gone up. Kirk Cousins has been released by the Falcons, and let's put them in as a job lot here. Kyler Murray released by the Cardinals in the two of the more expected moves in the quarterback market this free agency period.
Yeah, it could be quite funny as well, because in a couple of months' time we could see Cousins wearing a Cardinals jersey and Kyler Murray wearing a Vikings jersey. This has completely swapped things around from the way things have been. I don't think, obviously, as you're saying, neither of these is a surprise, especially The Kyler one, I think a lot of people, it already seems like people are sort of jockeying position for him because it feels like there's talent there for a coach to work with Kirk. I mean, really what you want for him is to find a way to put him in a situation where he's working with a young quarterback and he's just a good guy to have in the room. People are already suggesting that maybe he could be going to Vegas. It'd be quite funny. I don't know if does Cole's cash get you anything on the casino tables for Kirk Cousins going to Vegas. But himself and Mendoza might strike up a nice friendship. I feel like they've a similar ethos on things and maybe able to work well together. I think the Kyler Murray one is more interesting to me because I mean as much as we've I guess been quite negative on his play and his leadership ability and all this kind of thing, I feel like if you step into a culture and into a setup and working with the coach that is of stronger personality than you are, that might just be able to reset it and maybe bring something out of him. Not necessarily in the long term. I'm not expecting a Sam Darnold type resurrection in Minnesota from Kyler Murray if, let's say, he ends up having to play a lot of games because Jason McCarthy is injured, which, as you've seen the last couple of years, is far from unlikely. But I feel like that's more interesting. Like there is a world where Kyler Murray puts in a like much better than Carson Wentz did over the course of the season, puts in a pretty good shit to Minnesota.
I agree. And look, Ciaran Boyle, I know you've discussed the duality of Kyler Murray at length in the past. The lack of leader of men credentials jumps out, obviously, but the undoubted athletic talent is there. I mean, if you were to compare, say, Kyler Murray and Malik Willis side by side, all the hype around Malik Willis, Kyler Murray undoubtedly has a much higher ceiling if you can get it out of him.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I'm sorry, I'll refer to Ciaran now in a second. Obviously, he's someone who's
it was Ciaran I was actually referring to there, but thanks for answering for me.
But I know he's still stunned at the silence for the Evan Neal stuff. That's why
I was trying to encourage him back into the conversation. This is a safe space.
I've just seen a justification from Harbaugh that he likes Neal, so I'm digesting that still.
Well, digest this like possibility, right? Could we see Kyler Murray? JJ McCarthy goes down week 2, week 3, whatever. He's going to be out for. I'm not saying I want this to happen, by the way. Obviously, we don't want to pray for any players getting injured, but could this happen where Kyler Murray ends up being the next Kevin O'Connell reclamation project? And this time next year, we're talking about Kyler being a free agent going for $30-40 million a year.
No, the issue with Kyler, and I get where you're going with this, Shane, and I see the kind of. I can see your perspective, but no. Kyler Murray he's a selfish player. He's a me first kind of person. He's had issues with players for years in Arizona, most recently with Harrison Jr. It's an inability to communicate effectively, an inability to kind of translate the directions of an offensive coordinator or a head coach. It's body language. I mean, listen, football when it comes down to it. And this goes from Papa Warner all the way up. Body language tells a huge tale about a player. And you can see it from Kyler Murray's body language. He doesn't project as a player who, A, seems that he's all that, bothered by what's going on around him. Or he doesn't seem all that bothered by the performance of the players around him. I mean, you're looking for quarterbacks who elevate the play of other people. Kyler Murray has not done that in his career to this point. Now, if for some reason he does go to Minnesota and Kevin O'Connell stakes his NFL, head coaching tenure on Kyler Murray, well, that's that'd be an interesting show to watch. But I just don't, in my opinion, I've seen so much of Kyler Murray from when he was in college to his rookie year up to now, and you get a chance to show people who you are, and body language, demeanor, reputation in the locker room, your demeanor in press conferences, how you carry yourself, how you talk about others, how you respond to criticism, all these kind of things doesn't lend itself to someone who can, turn a franchise around, but be an effective part of a franchise and be, let's look at it this way. O'Connell, he may only have one more year in Minnesota if unless he is a quarterback who helps him out. But I just don't think, but like you said, it looks all signs point to Murray going to Minnesota, but I just don't see how it's going to work out.
Craig, I'm going to throw 3 names at you. You talked about a Hall of Famer earlier. I'm going to throw 3 potential Hall of Fame candidates, future Hall of Famers at you right here. Brian Murphy, Cameron Hahn, and AJ Stevens. They collectively are Daniel Jones' agents. and they know how to get their man paid. Billy the Kid was less adept at getting money, getting bank than Daniel Jones' agents are. Like, what absolute heroes. 88 million, 2 years to play in Indianapolis. It's a statement of where the market is, but it's also a statement of Daniel Jones gets paid wherever he goes.
Yeah, and it is jaw dropping. I mean, when you see the numbers, it's pretty impressive. But then you actually sort of see that first year number. I think it's 50 million this year. Now, admittedly, I think 44 of that is a signing bonus, so obviously doesn't hit the cap. I think it's only a 5 mil cap hit. So fair play to, you know.
Doesn't hit the cap because it's literally cash that he's getting handed over today. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, on one hand, you do have to say fair play to the Colts front office for going, do you know what? We are definitely overpaying. We have been sold the magic beans from the agents, and we're waiting for the beanstalk to grow that is Daniel Jones. However,
so now we're going to dry the beans, grind them up, and smoke them just to see what happens here.
But he is getting a lot of it up front, you know, and I think am I right in saying it's like a historic deal as well? It's the most any player has ever got for a 2-year deal. But someone did point out that when the Colts had Daniel Jones under center, they did lead the league in a lot of metrics, including, you know, EPA and the amount of yards that they were throwing around, points scored. So when he went down, a lot of that dropped from like first down to like mid-20s. So you can kind of see why they've done it. Daniel Jones has obviously just done an amazing job at being able to perform when it is getting towards payday. And then the agents have just kind of run with it and run wild, you know, Hulkamania style, all over the front office of whatever team he is going up against. And obviously it's a dagger to myself and to Ciaran here, because it just reminds us of what happened with the Saquon Barkley debacle and more than that.
Well, what people forget is Shane Jones wanted 3 years, 150, or at least his people did. I mean, that is stones. That is huevos rancheros right there. I mean, that is just an astonishing
$1 billion.
That's an astonishing demand. 150 for 3 years for Daniel Jones. If Alec Pierce, who apparently is his best friend, if he doesn't get at least a 20% cut of that, then Jones is doing him a disservice, because that deal is, I mean, the Colts folded big time in that deal. But what people forget, I mean, like Craig said, you know, he did decent kind of first, 2/3 of the season last year. But people forget a lot of those games were indoors in perfect weather conditions. The only time he went outdoors, he got beat by the Chiefs, I think it was, and then he got beat by the Jaguars. So, when he got injured, but
the Patriots, when the Patriots, who
was it the Patriots? I think there was two outdoor games he had that the Colts had lost, and then they went to Jacksonville in early December.
They lost in Pittsburgh. They won in Germany, which was outdoors, but were kind of nice in fairness.
Pittsburgh, that's right. I forgot, but that was KC. But yeah, but then the season capitulated in Jacksonville when he got injured. I mean, with an Achilles that's hanging on literally by a thread right now. I mean, that's a huge gamble from the Colts. People get and GMs get so skitty when it comes to quarterbacks. They're just throwing money around. And I wouldn't be surprised the way the quarterbacks are getting paid. I mean, look what Kyler Murray got a couple of years ago. I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised if he got 2 years, 100, 110. That's just the crazy way that the league is going with quarterback money right now. But still, 88 is crazy. It really is.
I know it's the wrong kind of way to look at this, and, you know, just based off what Ciaran was saying there, but like Deshaun Watson tore his Achilles and then tore it again. Like, we're not talking about Daniel Jones, who is fully healthy right now. Like, he's still having to rehab this Achilles. What happens if he tears it? Like, it's that just a massive amount of money that just goes to waste because Daniel Jones can't make it onto the field.
It's as you say, a notoriously difficult injury to rehab, and even once you're back cleared to play, it's one that hampers throwing motion. Like, you know, Aaron Rodgers, I know it's not like for like. Aaron Rodgers is a lot older than Daniel Jones is, and he was older when he got injured, but you know, it was a tough rehab for him. And when he was back with the Jets, like, it did not go well. He was clearly hampered in what he could do. And when so much of what Daniel Jones did last year was the Alec Pierce be down there somewhere, long ball down the field, he may not have Pierce to throw the ball to. We'll see what way that one pans out. But Shane, I wanted to look, you know, one of the other significant moves of the day before we wrap was Kevin Byard, Bears safety, signing for the Patriots. He led the league in interceptions last year. Big year for him, and of course reunited with Mike Vrabel, for whom he played in Tennessee.
Yeah, it's funny. Patriots, Twitter, and WhatsApp groups and everything are way more happy about this than they are about the Romeo Dobbs trade, which I feel like Romeo Dobbs is also a good pickup to have. But yeah, great to have brought in, because I think like the defense the last couple of years, if you look at this, the way that the Patriots have tried to rebuild the team towards where they got to this season, the offense has been the focus of so much chopping and changing. This year, I feel like the defense is in for a big sweep in terms of like the linebacker room has pretty much been cleared out already, and having somebody, this is a 1-year deal. In fairness, I think it's a year for $9 million, but I don't know. There are some players, Daniel Jones, for example, who does always maybe sort of always play at an elevated level when they know they're still trying to chase that next payday. So maybe 1-year deals aren't always the worst thing in the world. But yeah, I think this is a really a sweet little pickup. It's not going to gather too many major headlines, but like you're saying, with somebody who gets interceptions, which of course we know that the Bears overall were exceptionally good at last year. Any little insight you can get from that scheme, but just the eyes of being able to read things, being in the right situation. It's not like he's coming from a place where he was playing indoors or playing in soft weather. He was playing in Chicago as well. So yeah, no, really like this, and I would like to put on record, I also like the Dobbs move as well for New England, because he's very similar to Diggs, but I feel like that you can actually whereas with Diggs you lose a leadership character. With Dobbs, I think you can get something that's more moldable for Mike McDaniel. So I think quietly the Patriots are going about their business. They're not spending anywhere near as much cash as they were last year, because let's face it, they don't really need to. The draft is where the Patriots are going to build this year. But yeah, I think it's a really nice move.
Yeah, no, 2 good pickups, as you say. I'd very much agree with that. And just before we wrap, just wanted to make a point on another sporting note, or just pay tribute to Ronnie Delaney, who has sadly passed away at the age of 91. Ronnie Delaney won a gold medal, the 1500, at the 1956 Olympics in Melbourne. That was, at the time, a high water mark for Irish athletics, and was something that a lot of people aspired to replicate for years. A giant of Irish athletics, and a man widely admired beyond these shores. And I suppose a sad note that he's passed away, but we'll see an NFL game in Melbourne, and will give us a chance to focus on the site of that historic victory for him at that Olympic Games. May he rest in peace. That's all we got for this evening on the Irish NFL Show.